Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to all of you to today's seminar talk by the esteemed Professor Ishtiaq Ahmed. We are honored to have such distinguished scholar with us today to share his insight and expertise on the topic India and Pakistan Peace in Our Lifetime. We are grateful to have all of you here, including our faculty, members, staff, students, and Punekar, and as well as our esteemed guest. So before we begin, I would like to take a moment of acknowledge to presence of our respected Vice Chancellor, Dr. Ajit Ranade, who will be chairing today's session. Dr. Ranade's dedication to academia and his vast knowledge in the field of economics have been guiding force to our institute. We are also privileged to have Dr. Sankalp Gurjar as the discussant of today's seminar. Dr. Gurjar's expertise and research acumen will undoubtedly enrich the discussion following Professor Ahmed's talk. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to Professor Ahmed for gracing us with his presence and agreeing to share his valuable insight with us today. Professor Ahmed's contribution to the field of political science and his extensive research on India and Pakistan are highly commendable. So before today's talk, today's talk promise to be both enlightening and thought-provoking as we dwell into the complexities of the relationship between India and Pakistan and explore the possibilities of peace in our lifetime. Before I hand over to Dr. Ranade, we would like to facilitate our guest and discussant of today's event with a token of our coffee table book, which is written by Mahatma Gandhi. Yeah. So without further ado, I would like to hand over the session to our esteemed Vice Chancellor, Dr. Ajit Ranade, who will be chairing today's seminar and guiding us through his enriching experience. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Vishal Gaikwad, and good afternoon to all of you, and a very warm welcome for this wonderful and special session. The title of today's session is India-Pakistan, Peace in Our Lifetime, question mark. Oh, question mark, Janab Professor Ji is important. I'm delighted to, of course, welcome Professor Ishtiaq Ahmed, Emeritus and renowned Professor of Political Science from Stockholm University, but more importantly, a very renowned person, author, scholar, and now actually a famous personality even in India. He is going to speak, so I don't want to say too much about him because you'll get to hear him firsthand. I just want to say that I'll take 2 minutes. You know, when this great war was about to break up, by the way, before I go ahead, I want to specially acknowledge the presence of some dignitaries here. Mr. Firodia, Chairperson of Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute. Welcome, sir. And Justice Gokhale, former Justice of the Supreme Court of India. Of course, I'm sure there are other dignitaries, but welcome to you all, and thank you for being here today evening. Before the big war was going to break out, it was becoming imminent. So a great man said, "Let me go and try to be an emissary, or try one more time." I am referring to the great war of what is called the Mahabharata, which is an epic, and of course everybody is familiar with Mahabharata. And before the war was supposed to begin, or before the commencement of the war, which was seen to be inevitable, imminent, the person who insisted that he wanted to give peace one more chance was the great Sri Krishna. So his people, that is the Pandavas and senior people, said, "No, sir, somebody of your stature, don't go and demean yourself. आप जाएंगे, आपको insult होगा, they will just mistreat you. It is not worth it, and nothing will come out of it." पता है ना आपको? Because we will just send an ambassador, किसी को भेजते हैं. He said, कोई तैयार नहीं तो मैं ही जाता हूँ. Let me go and try one more time, one last time at least. Uh, in fact, as you know, what happened is when he went to the court of Dhritarashtra, वो इवनिंग में आए तो उस रात को वो विदुर के घर में रहे. He did not. He took the hospitality of the great sage Vidur. Please don't be afraid. This is not a talk on Mahabharata. We are going to hear Professor Ishtiaq. But वो विदुर के घर में रहे रात को, सुबह उनके कोर्ट में आए. So he was careful. He didn't take the hospitality of Dhritarashtra. जो जिस एम्परर के कोर्ट में जा रहे थे. So Krishna made this famous statement that in the pursuit of peace, I'm just paraphrasing, हम तो English में बात करेंगे, but he spoke in some other language probably. In the pursuit of peace, no stone should be left unturned. There is no, the pursuit of peace is never ending. So today's talk is in that spirit. Okay? कहाँ वो श्री कृष्णा, कहाँ महाभारत, हम तो हमारी हिस्ट्री तो सिर्फ 75 साल की है. There were two twins who were born on the same day. दो twin देखो आज उनकी मतलब the same twins today. That's where we have come. Now, since sir, this is a institute of university which deals in economic science and political science and allied subjects. So we look at the Pakistan economy. And today, it is not doing well. Pakistan has something like 170, 180 million people. So, among the countries in the world, it is probably some 9th or 10th largest, 6th largest country in the world. So, not very behind India. So, 6th largest means it's a huge part of humanity. And they are currently undergoing an economic crisis, a political crisis. In fact, two state governments, provincial governments have been dismissed, a climatic crisis, and I would say humanitarian crisis. The great floods that you had last year, apparently some, 20, 30 million children are, vulnerable and on the brink of disease and starvation. So, बहुत हालत खराब है. ये तो आज की बात है. But we have come here, there's a history. And as I said, we are twins. Now you might say this is a modern geopolitical reality. वो मार्को पोलो के ज़माने में कोई वीसा और पासपोर्ट पूछते नहीं थे. वो तो ऑल पूरी दुनिया में घूमा. आज यहाँ से हम इस डिस्ट्रिक्ट में उस डिस्ट्रिक्ट में जाएंगे तो शायद ये आधार कार्ड बताओ. But so those were these lines of sand that we drew in 1947. And you know the history, sir. What is that famous Englishman जिसको 15 दिन दिए गए? Ratcliffe, the famous Mr. Ratcliffe. So yeah, somebody drew a line and then we call it two countries and then we are twins and then etc. etc. So anyway, I don't want to say anything further, but I'm very happy because as I said, Professor Ishtiaq Ahmed, he has written several books. I'm told 3 of the books which he is particularly himself proud of. You should also, if you get a chance after today, look up some of his speeches on YouTube. And we are very happy to have him here. He spoke, by the way, on the 100th anniversary of Vasanta Vyakhyan Mala. So he recently gave a speech. He was supposed to be in India only for a few days, but I'm happy to report that he has extended his stay and was able to come to Pune. So a very warm welcome to Mr. Ishtiaq Ahmed.
Dr. Zainade Sahib, this distinguished audience, I'm greatly honored to stand up in front of you and share a vision which I hope becomes a movement and the belief in peace is vindicated ultimately. But the way the question has been posed, India-Pakistan peace in our lifetime, question mark. The question is whose lifetime? We have people who are about 20, 30 years younger than me, and so what may not be possible for me could be very much possible for them. So, but I would still want to believe that this is possible within my own lifetime. And what is this based on? On a very simple experience that I've gone through, and that is that first, Invited to Lahore, Pakistan, which is my hometown, to speak on a book which challenges the very nitty gritty on which the Pakistani state is based, and that is on Jinnah. Jinnah, his successes, failures, and role in history. And it's actually a Penguin publication originally, but then published by Vanguard Books, Lahore, of Najam Sethi, and recently the Urdu translation has also been published. And I was invited, every year in January in Lahore, we have this literary festival called Think Fest. So they invited me to come and talk about my book, and two of the leading lawyers of Pakistan were prepared with a brief to question my positions and so on. And I must say that having written the book, I could sense the consequences which a hostile audience in Pakistan could create. But the great surprise was that everything went on in a very civilized manner. And although the two lawyers, Salman Raja and Asad Rahim Khan, had come up with very, strong arguments in favor of Jinnah and his role in history, they considered all important points which I took up. Like, for example, that it is not Mahatma Gandhi who brought religion into politics. Rather, religion was already in politics, but he tried to bring the best in all religions, which was emphasizing the shared common humanity. So that point they conceded. And the second point I took up was that the so-called persecution of Muslims during the Congress ministries was a fraudulent sort of two reports. They were without substance, and Viceroy Linlithgow admitted that I'm going to tell Jinnah that there is no substance in the accusations made against the Congress governments. So these two important points they conceded, but in the end they tried the rhetoric by saying, wasn't Jinnah right? Because look at what is happening to Muslims in Narendra Modi's India. Now, I must say that on that occasion, I didn't know how to handle, because this happened in the last 2 or 3 minutes, and then the discussion came to an end. But subsequently, when I had to face this question wherever I went, then I said, did not Mr. Jinnah say on the 30th of March 1941 in Kanpur that that he will make 2 crore 20 million Muslims experience martyrdom and get smashed in order to liberate 7 crore or 70 million from the tutelage of the Hindu Congress. So one, and then I said, Jinnah Saab's whole campaign in favor of Pakistan was based on the allegation or the fear that in a united India, Islam will be annihilated and Muslims will be obliterated. So we need Pakistan to protect both. And are we not now duty bound, like Israel, to open the borders of Pakistan and let all persecuted Indian Muslims seek refuge? And I noticed that question disappeared in all subsequent meetings which I addressed. So wherever I went in 9 weeks, I addressed 27 public audiences, all sorts. Islamabad, Lahore is of course my home city, so I had local support as well. Karachi, Hyderabad, Sindh, Sargoda. And people were very eager to get another perspective on what went or what happened during the freedom struggle and the partition and so on. So I realized that the people did want to have a good, friendly relationship with the people of India. And then I was invited here by Vasant Bakhian Mala, and the topic was the tale of two friends lost in a fair India-Pakistan trajectories and how should they deal with each other. So as soon as I announced that I'm coming, I was inundated by so many invitations, and I've been able to avail of a portion of them, and so many I couldn't because I'm now nearly exhausted and want to go back after nearly 3 months. So the amount of respect, affection, warmth I have received in India only proves that the Pakistani people and the Indian people at heart do not bear that venom, that hatred which official ideology prescribes. So that is where the hope is. That as soon as we can question some of the things which happened in the past, look at the present and present some alternative to this current situation, hopefully things will start improving. Pakistani YouTubers, I think, are very brave. They live in Pakistan and dare to ask questions which are uh, calling into question the official narrative of Pakistan. And in India also, I find that by and large, the goodwill is part of the way human beings always behave under normal circumstances. So now the question, India Pakistan peace in our lifetime. I think yes, my lifetime. I am of course using it in a symbolic manner because you know whenever you look at social science or any science or any study of human beings and culture, there are two ways you can approach it. Either you assume that human beings are estranged in their essence, and therefore, no matter what you try, they will always be finding excuses for hostility and so on and so forth. Or the alternative position, which is that human beings are basically united in their essence. And all we need to do is to bring the common humanity forward. And as soon as we are in a position to do it, we can change things for the better. And obviously, I subscribe to the latter position. But looking at the past, is there any basis for optimism? Yes and no. The yes part is like this, that twice the Indian government offered Pakistan a no war pact. But Pakistan said that such a pact would not be possible as long as the Kashmir issue is not resolved. And then, after India and China had gone to war, then General Ayub Khan, Field Marshal Ayub Khan, offered a no war pact. Uh, and then the Indian government took the position this no war pact is against whom? Because by that time Pakistan had entered SATO, CENTO, and military alliances with the United States. So, three efforts were made already to, to contain the damage which was done from 1937, especially until the partition took place, in which the two-nation theory, which had been on the margins since 1847, suddenly was catapulted into the mainstream because of a number of events, for which we don't have time to go through. But 37 onwards till 47, all that could be used to create suspicion, hatred of the other was used, and I would say it's standing here essentially by the Muslim League and by Muhammad Ali Jinnah. I've quoted all his speeches where all this is present. Of course, from the Indian side, we had statements of Savarkar coming to the same conclusion as the Muslim League, and we had the even more hostile statement of Gokhale saying that we should learn from the Germans how they have treated the Jews, and non-Muslims and non-Hindus in India would be treated the same way. They can't accept equal citizenship, not even second-rate citizenship. So these positions were tossed around from 1857 on from both sides. We have Iqbal saying this in 1930 and Chaudhry Rahmat Ali saying the same. But after the 1936-7 elections, when the Congress got a mandate in the Hindu majority provinces, and the Muslim League was routed in the Muslim majority provinces. The Congress got in the Hindu majority provinces, plus in the most Muslim majority province of that time, the Northwest Frontier province. But the Muslim League was rejected by the people of Punjab, Sindh, and those areas. But then a number of events happened of which we have no time to go through. But from 1940 onwards, the Muslim League had decided to work towards the partition of India, and although many offers were made by the Congress to sort of build trust and so on, but I think the Muslim League had decided that it will go for the partition, and it's the British finally who weighed the two positions and decided that a partitioned India with a Pakistan based on Islamic ideology, and as they say, I've quoted, armed with British science, would be the best guarantee to keep South Asia safe from the spread of Soviet communism. So you see, if we go back in the past, it's the fear of the spread of Soviet communism which was defining the politics of those times. Even after the Second World War, it became the main focus of the Cold War, how the world was pushed in either joining one or the other camp. There, India continued having its independent foreign policy and non-aligned movement, and Pakistan entered the military pact. So even in foreign sort of sphere, these two states which had separated in a very gory, in a very bloody manner, with 1 million people killed, of which 80% were from Punjab, 14 to 15 million people forced to leave their homes in search of safe havens on the other side, of which once again 10 million were just Punjabis. The partition bequeathed this experience of violence and hatred and so on. So on both sides, this experience became part of their way of dealing with one another. And then we have, of course, the 19th. So when we look at some of the efforts made towards peace, the best example is the 1962 Indus Water Treaty, which was agreed between Pakistan and India. And despite all the 3-4 war and this constant tension and so on, that water treaty has been maintained by both sides with some objections here and there. So there are examples where the two states have shown an interest in building peace, and there is a good example of how this sharing of water has been a success story. 1965, in my opinion, is the turning point where these efforts and the old type of leaders who knew one another by age and all sort of started receding, and new things happened. And after the 65 war in Pakistan, a curtain came down, I think on both sides. And then we didn't know what was happening in India except through the newspapers and maybe radio. And of course, Indian films and Pakistani films and so on. Culture-wise, things still continue. But after 65 war, even that source was denied to people in Pakistan. And then I think the 71 war is where Pakistan comes up with this argument that, look, India never wanted Pakistan ever to stabilize. And when they got the opportunity, they broke up Pakistan. And so a more militant type of Pakistan ideology based on Islamic ideas and so on began to receive uh, patronage of the state, cultivation by the state, and some accidents in history impacted on this, aggravating the situation. In 1978, you have the communist state come to power in April in Afghanistan. In February 1979, a fundamentalist regime comes to power in Iran. And in 1997, earlier, General uh, uh, Ziaul Haq had captured power in Pakistan. So this area was, I think, radicalized already in the late 70s, Afghan Jihad and so on. Later on, after that Afghan Jihad came to an end in 1890-89, Pakistan started sending these terrorists, Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed, into the Indian Kashmir, and even they struck targets within India, like Mumbai twice, I think even more places in Maharashtra, in Punjab, in Delhi, and so many areas. And Pakistan alleges that there was an Indian hand already in Balochistan, although they have never been able to apprehend someone except this Yadav, who's the commander in the Navy, and the case is still going on. So, uh, this sort of animosity between the two states has sort of grown with time rather than being uh, reduced in its intensity. And I would say that in the process, what we note is that while all this was happening, India remained steadfast to its constitution. It was able to institutionalize the democratic process, and despite the emergency 2 years, things came back to that sort of practice. And in the 90s, India even liberalized its economy, and now it's a great, great growing economic power. There is no denying about it. Wherever I go, I see so much industry, so much development having taken place. So my argument is that Indian governments may have ideological differences, and they most certainly do, but keeping the national interest in focus in the policies of the government has always been there. And so after 76 years, I would say India is a success story, given that the the cultural, ethnic, religious, sectarian cults and so on, despite all this variegation and diversity, India remains one and is strong, and it's from 9 states, it has become 29 states. So there is a process whereby the Indian state does contain demands for separate uh, representation and empowerment and so on. The only condition is that any area trying to secede from India is crushed with all the power the state has at its disposal, like the Kashmir issue and Khalistan and elsewhere. So, on the whole, India is doing very well all round. Its education policy, thanks to Jawaharlal Nehru and Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, who together, I think, set up the basic higher education institutions and created the bases upon which modern India has grown. Although in the polemics going on in India, that is very often forgotten. But I would insist that without Nehru, there wouldn't be the modern India on which others have come and contributed. So I find this continuity in the Indian case. What happened to Pakistan? I think in Pakistan, finding arguments as a lawyer, Jinnah, I think, was a past master. Any argument which helped him divide Hindus and Muslims and Congress and Muslim League, he used with a relish. And in my book, I have ad infinitum, uh, shown that this is the case, and it's a myth that Jinnah never wanted the partition, and Nehru especially forced it upon Pakistan on Jinnah. I've shown that it has no basis. It's a thesis passed by the Cambridge University and without any evidence being given in the book. So the way we look upon Cambridge and these places, we have to reconsider how theses are passed and so on without fulfilling the essential needs of substantiating your claims with proper proof. Anyhow, Pakistan having come into being, then the problem was it was a state for the Muslims with some minorities, and those minorities were alienated ipso facto. It's a state for Muslims in which minorities also live, but they are not part of the nation. Simple as that. Technically, they may have a Pakistani passport, but the way the nation was defined, it was the Germanic model. I say there are two models of nationalism. One, the French, which is territorial nationalism. All those born on a territory are part of the nation, irrespective of their religion, caste, language, ethnicity, and so on. So it's an inclusive idea of a nation. And the German model is that you are part of a nation either through race or through belief or some other particularistic aspect. And I think Pakistan came into being as a state for the Muslims. But then the problem was that if Hindu society was divided on the basis of caste, Muslim society was deeply divided on the basis of sect and subsects. And so all these years the effort has been to somehow make Pakistan democratic and Islamic. And in my doctoral thesis, which is not very often mentioned, but which I think is the basic framework through which all other books have emerged, is the concept of an Islamic state and analysis of the ideological controversy in Pakistan, where I could demonstrate that you can use the Quran and Sunnah or the Hadith the way you want. Like a magic wand, on one hand you can argue that in Islam everything has been laid down or worked out. So all you need to do is to enforce or implement the Quranic message. So no need for a parliament, for democracy or any other sort of law, everything is given. And then on the other end, the other pole of this discussion are those who quote that Prophet Muhammad, it's a famous hadith of it, he's saying that when I tell you something about this world, then I'm just a human being. But when I tell you something about the spiritual world, then follow me. So from there they argue that the Prophet himself divided the world into the temporal and the spiritual. So a secular state is possible while it is also an Islamic state. And I've said this is a great achievement of playing with words, circumlocution and so on, you decorative sort of exercises. The conclusion I draw is that either you can be a democracy or you can be an Islamic state. You can't be, or you are either, what you are doing now is that you are fish and fowl together, and that doesn't work. So if you are into an Islamic state, then go for an Islamic state and take all the responsibilities which such a state then imposes on the rulers. And for example, I give, recently in Karachi, a Hindu mandir was attacked and brought down and so on. But fortunately, the Supreme Court has intervened. And but the example is that when Muhammad bin Qasim came to Sindh, there was a problem now how to deal with the Hindus, Buddhists, and Jains who became the subject people. So he sent this problem to Damascus, which was then the capital of the Umayyad Caliphate, for a ruling. According to the Islamic point of view, how should we deal with these people? And the ulama or the fuqaha, the scholars of Islam at that time, used the method in Islamic law known as qiyas, which is analogy. And through that process, they argued that the people of India believe in the same God as the Arabs and others do. So we extend the same idea, because in the Quran there is a verse which says that the people of the book, Jews, Christians, and Sabians, can live among Muslims peacefully. They can hold on to their religion, they can carry on their businesses uh, as long as they pay the jizya, which is the protection tax. But once you pay the jizya, then you are not required to take part in the holy wars of the Islamic State. So that's a trade-off. So already Muhammad bin Qasim came with a ruling which explains why, and this I tell my attackers in India who find Islam and Muslim just doing all that was wrong, that in the 700 years or so when the Muslims were ruling northern India at least, by the time Muslim rule came to an end, only 19% of the Indian population had converted to Islam. Of course, I am told that Hinduism has a resilience which nobody else has, and I'm sure that point also needs to be uh, accepted. But it could not have been a very oppressive, and we know it wasn't, because only today we were discussing how Akbar and all these rulers were in the habit of carrying everyone with them. And who fought the wars for the Mughals, if not the Rajputs and so on? All that story is too well known. But in currently India, of course, there is a reaction the way Pakistan has, crafted its narrative, saying, and this is a statement by the way of Jinnah, on I think 8th or 10th of March 1944 in Aligarh, that when the first Indian converted to Islam, he was ostracized by his community, and that's when the foundation of Pakistan was laid. So the way Pakistan's origin is explained can be anything like Muhammad bin Qasim or the first Indian converting and so on. So going back to Mohenjo-daro and the Vedic period is therefore left aside. So that sort of narrative is now, I think, getting its echo in Indian situations, but I'm hoping that Indian people would be able to maintain the high standard of inquiry and so on which is the great asset of the secular state which India became in 1947 and so on. So now, at the current situation, what is the hope? And here I bring in Hobbes. You see, Hobbes has a theory about human nature. He says human beings by nature are aggressive, they seek power and glory. And in the state of nature, everybody is equal and free. So when everybody is equal and free, it's a war of all against all, because if I don't get up and attack Professor Ranade, he'll get up and attack me. So what do? I attack first. But this attacking first leaves everybody insecure and unprotected. And then Hobbes said that this sort of experience says that there is another part to human nature, and that is the rationality of survival. So the human beings in that imaginary state of nature decided to set up a civil state under law and gave the sovereign the right to tell us what rights we enjoy, how much freedom we enjoy, so that peace could be established and security could be established. So my argument is that Pakistan has been on a self-destructive course for too long. I call it nihilism. It's a word I love sharing with people, because as a teacher, I think adding to vocabulary is also part of my duty. Nihilism explains Pakistan's dilemma. The way they make policies are self-defeating. Like, teachers of physics and so on are told that when you go to the class, do tell them about Copernicus, Galileo, and so on, but say that this is the one theory, but we have to believe the creationist theory of the Quran and the Bible and so on. So the teacher is then just explaining a theory without intellectually getting involved in that. And I think that is the type of harm you do to your own people by denying them a chance to get modern education and move forward. So Pakistan has to uh, rectify its current situation, which has led to the economic crisis Pakistan is facing. I think practically, virtually, it is insolvent. It's bankrupt since a long time. And you find $1 billion loan and people celebrate it. This is quite, perverted way of dealing with your tragedy, uh, which is which makes me very sad. I'm at heart very much a Lahori and a Punjabi, and I don't want my people there to be in this very stupid situation. But who is responsible for this? It's Pakistan's establishment, they call it the deep state, the rogue element, and so on, who have been uh, responsible for not giving the Pakistani people a chance to think independently, think in their best interest. But now that ruling class, I don't think, can reproduce itself as it did in the past. The Americans were always there to bail them out. Then came the Saudis when they had a conflict with Iran. Now we are left only with China. And China, as we all know, if they give 1 rupee, they want 2.5 in return. So that's not going to be very helpful. And I do hope that in Pakistan, people like these YouTubers and very brave people who live in Pakistan. I was there for 9 weeks and got away by saying all these things. But when you live there and you have a family to take care of, then I think it's a lot of courage, and that courage is there in the people of Pakistan. So, what can we do if we come to some of the recommendations? One would be to convince both India and Pakistan to let people 65 plus get visa easily and visit the other side. When you don't meet people, you can either idolize them or you can demonize them. It's only when you meet people that you find it's a mix. So that would be one thing. Second would be something very close to that. We have to encourage, because of the social media and so on, panel discussions on both sides, where Indian scholars and Pakistanis take part. I have had an experience which is not all that promising. We had a discussion on the partition, and we have a group in Amsterdam called the Overseas Progressive Pakistanis. So we tried to recruit some of the leading Indian scholars, but they didn't respond. They didn't want to take part in it. And on one or two other occasions also, they shied away. Whereas the Pakistanis, a few of us, are always willing to come up and share what we think is wrong with Pakistan and what we think India can also be doing wrong to itself. But in India, there is, of course, one reason to say this is that in the recent uh, uh, free press index, India is 161 and Pakistan is 150. So in some ways, we are freer than what is going on in India. There's a lot of self-censorship which prevails here. Why? We don't know. So Pakistan must also drastically revise its textbooks, the educational curriculum. It is full of hatred of Hindus and India. And I'm not the first one. It was Professor K.K. Aziz who wrote the book, The Murder of History. Of course, when he wrote this, he had to leave Pakistan, and I think the later part of his life he was in the UK. Maybe then he came back and so on. And then others have done similar work on the textbooks and shown how uh, the gross distortion, obfuscation of facts is taking place in Pakistan. And then with time, they introduced more of Islam in the educational process. From what I know, the new educational policy requires even BA level students, BSc level students to memorize or learn 30 chapters of the Quran and Hadith literature. And I'm saying this is no way of developing a love for Islam, because you force it on people to pass an exam, and that's not the way you actually create a deep rooted love for anything when you force people into that. But that's the way Pakistan is doing. The third, I would say then, is trade. We should all encourage trade between India and Pakistan. Of course, India also benefits from it, because if the land route is granted, Wagah and Atari, and in Sindh there are some places, and Hussainiwala and Kasur on our side in Punjab, I think a lot of benefit would take place. Professor Raj Mohan Gandhi once, in his book From Aurangzeb to Mountbatten, has actually devoted a whole chapter showing that if the two Punjabs were to start trading and cooperating, then this region would once again emerge as a great, great economic power. And obviously, India is, with Maharashtra being a leading force and many other parts of India, this would only add to India's upward movement. I say the takeoff stage of Rusto is now for India. Pakistan, which is in such a bad shape, would greatly benefit from it, and we'll get things cheaper. We can also try to market our goods in the much bigger Indian market. You know, ever since I've come, I've been getting messages from Pakistan, from justices and so on. And one gentleman, Noor Muhammad Kasuri, who along with another leading industrialist, they have prepared a charter showing if India-Pakistan trade were to happen, how much Pakistan would benefit greatly. So these arguments are all there among people who are responsible and informed. Ultimately, Pakistan has to give up its extremism. All forms of terrorism have to be eradicated. I think that precondition from India is an imperative one, and Pakistan should do that convincingly. Once that happens, what is then the Kashmir issue? There, my position is, look, we have had 4 wars on Kashmir, and no war has settled this issue. So why not understand the way history behaved? You know, just for your information, actually, Jinnah Sahib spurned 3 attempts from India to say, you keep Kashmir, we keep Hyderabad. I gave all those examples in my book. It's Jinnah who didn't accept it, because he wanted not only Kashmir but Hyderabad and Junagadh. Ultimately, we got none. So that is also a heresy for me to bring out, that it's Jinnah who is responsible and not anyone else in Pakistan who lost Kashmir in a peaceful sort of exchange of this and that. So with all the information, so what is the basis on which I build my optimism? I think, at least for my work and what so many of my Pakistani friends are doing, YouTubers and writers, and in India, of course, many, ultimately the truth is, God is not truth, truth is God. So once you bring out the truth and you share it, good people will respond to it. And I think your presence is a very good vindication of what I'm saying. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with your views. So now I request Dr. Sankalp Gurjar to share his thoughts. Yeah. So,
Okay. Thank you, sir. You wanted me to ask provocative questions when you make it, so let me try. First question, you said visa-free travel for people above 65. I am young. What if, we make it open for young people so that they will meet each other and marry each other? So, yeah.
Actually, I would welcome that. But when I came to listen to change my life, I thought I'll take a cautious position. So I said 65 plus. And then one gentleman got up and said, "Sir, what about the terrorists coming to India?" So my response was, the day terrorists need a visa to come is the end of terrorism. So I welcome that. Let them mix, let them marry, let them do whatever they want. We all have one life and everybody has a right to uh, make something out of it as long as they are not hurting us.
India and Pakistan are at 75 years. What do you see at 100 years we will be like?
In 100 years, two things, three things. One, if Pakistan doesn't change its course, it will ultimately disintegrate. 25 years on, they can't continue. It's being bankrupt for 25 years with no economic development taking place, no political uh, government coming to power and establishing the norms of modern type of statehood and so on. So 25 years, I think, is a long, long time in which this can happen. Second is they can change course and take the cue from me and others and become friends with India because this whole partition and this whole argument is so artificial that it can only be kept up by preaching hatred. But with the social media now making that, if not impossible, you can at least question all that. And the experience of the Pakistani people is, what have we gained from this confrontation with India? So I think in 25 years there's a very good chance that we will have a more normal and then even friendly relationship with India and Pakistan. The third is the one which I fear is that this sort of extremism gets hold of both societies. Pakistan is already in its stranglehold, and that will lead to a war. And if a war takes place in which nuclear weapons are used, we can't imagine the consequences of that. So I hope the third possibility is uh, defeated at all points, and peace is given a chance.
Quick comment is that in 1961 a wall went up. In 1989 the wall came down. Just nearly 28 years. Unification of East and West Germany in our own lifetime. If you go to talk to people in South Korea and North Korea, the people express desire to unify. But those artificial divisions and partitions, they're not on the basis of religion, whereas India Pakistan is religion. So don't you think the prospects are harder? I'm just butting in actually Sankalp.
Yeah, actually, I think religion being a divisive factor is an additional problem. But remember, the same religion has not prevented European war of religion in the 17th century, and Catholics butchered Protestants and vice versa, and within the Protestants, the Calvinists and Lutherans were cutting their throats, and one fifth or one fourth of the European population had to flee to the Americas to escape persecution. And then later on, they've had two world wars, also among Christians, Christians fighting Christians. But so religion is a divisive factor, no doubt, in our sort of context. But we also have the alternative way of dealing with it, going back to the bhakti and to the yogis and to the sons and to the Sufis and to the gurus and the gurus. And that message is still part of the popular state thing. Like Buddha Shah always quotes, "कल समझ नहीं फिर औलाद की." गर्व समझ नहीं थे रौला से कल कहते हैं बात से अगर बात समझ आए तो ये कहता क्यों कल समझ नहीं थे रौला से ए राम रहीम से मौला से तो people can start thinking in Pakistan, for example, all the Sufi literature and such literature was taught as a Punjabi in Lahore on the 20th of February. I was invited to speak on the mother tongue. And I, before me, spoke all other things, how Punjabi was oppressed and so on. Then I got it. But of course, Punjabi is oppressed. But who are oppressing the Punjabi? 55% of Pakistan is Punjabi. So Pakistan army is Punjabi. And bureaucracy is Punjabi. Now even the business class is all Punjabi. So you can't say that the Sindhis are oppressing Punjabis or the Pakhtuns.
The Punjabis are oppressing Punjabis because through Urdu, they get a handle on all other nationalities. And they don't allow Punjabi to be spoken officially. Do you know in the Punjab Assembly, Legislative Assembly, it was a ban on speaking in Punjab. Then one of our chief ministers removed the ban, but the ban was brought back. And then now the arrangement is that you have to first convince the speaker and he may, in his discussion, let you speak in Punjabi. Now how do you explain that? You can only explain that because Pakistan is not a normal state, it's an ideological state. And all ideological states, whether of the left or the right, ultimately end up in a corner where they become sort of oblivious to the actual facts going on in society. And so the Punjabis may complain all the time, but after they heard me, they started using a lot of abuse, saying कि सारे सारे leader झूठ बोल दे रहे हैं सर तुसी गल सही दसी कि you are the one who has pointed out कि यार हमने खुद ये अपने आप पे किया हुआ है ये बाहर से आके किसी ने किया किसने किया
So what I was trying to say कि all this is possible if we keep on trying. ना हुआ तो फिर मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ कोई नहीं.
Okay. I was going to ask you about Punjabi dominance. To be provocative, if we finish Punjabi dominance in Pakistan, can we have a normal state in Pakistan? Is it possible?
Well, when you say Punjabi dominance, you mean a strong federal structure, huh?
Yes.
Well, we have the 18th Amendment, which has technically, passed on a lot of powers to the provinces. The problem is that in Sindh, I had a Hindu girl from Ladkana, my student in Government College University. I used to come and teach every winter. Huh? So she said, sir, you guys are lucky in Punjab. You have colleges, you have universities, you have teachers, and I'm so happy I'm studying here in Lahore because in Ladkana, where Mr. Bhutto and his family come from, there is a college, but there are no teachers. Every now and then they bring someone, pay him a small amount of money to give a lecture, and there are no. So the Punjabi, the Sindhi Vadera is oppressing its own people. The Baloch Sardar, a friend of mine, all leftists, invited to a wedding party in Balochistan. He said that when he went there, when the tribal Sardar came, nobody could look in his eyes. So everybody had to look down there. So with these people in Balochistan and so on, the Punjabis behaving themselves is most important. And of course there should be a genuine federation. But a lot has to be done by the people who just blame the Punjabis for all the ills which are there in Pakistan. Pakhtun society, men sit and they discuss everything, but you never see a woman ever in Pakhtun society. So the women are just conspicuous by their absence. In Punjab, you may see them here and there. Punjab is fairly more open, more educated, more loud, of course, as we all know, but that's all right. So the story is far more complicated, but in this thing which has gone wrong, the Punjabi power elite bears most responsibility, but not just themselves. There have been attempts to introduce modern schools in Balochistan, and they just blow them up, saying that as long as we are not free, we'll not let modern education be given here. But it leaves the Baloch completely dependent on their sardars. So that's the tragedy.
Final question from my side.
Yeah.
Okay, final question, and then we can open it up for audiences perhaps. When it comes to Pakistan, there is this hope that civilian politicians will perhaps bring peace between India and Pakistan, whereas the evidence is on the contrary, right? I mean, in the 90s, we see Benazir Bhutto very more virulent than perhaps the language that army would deploy. Same with Imran. So why do civilian politicians in Pakistan keep using that language?
Because, yeah.
I want to add something to that question. You mentioned कि मेरे friends सब leftist हैं. So I'm going to sneak in my question. उन्होंने कहा कि civilian guys are letting us down. Mr. Bhutto, when he came to power, there was so much hope and aspiration. ये आ गया तो बहुत enlightened आदमी है. उसने तो पाकिस्तान को और भी फंडामेंटलिस्ट बनाया।
नहीं, तो ये जो आपका कमेंट है वो एक्सप्लेन करता है कि पाकिस्तानी पॉलिटिक्स का रूल ये है कि when you are threatened, play the Islamic card. So when he came with Islamic socialism, the whole right-wing ulama fundamentalists started accusing him of promoting atheism and so on and saying Islamic law के खिलाफ है ये. Bhutto, when he felt threatened, what should he do? He then took up this issue which is in Punjab politics of great significance for 100 years and more, the question of the Ahmadi or Qadiani community. The Khatme Nabuwat, the finality of the prophethood of Prophet Muhammad. Sunni Muslims and even Shias believe that after the Prophet, there is no prophet awaited. That's over. But this group has a ruler, had a founder, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, who claimed to be a Nabi, saying, I'm not a messenger, but I'm nevertheless one who receives revelation from God. And from the Ahmadis, by the way, don't accept anyone as Muslim except themselves. But the majority in Pakistan is Sunni. So, in order to, who would be at the receiving end? It's the Ahmadis. So that's Pakistan's democracy. It's majoritarian. It's the National Assembly of Pakistan without any abstention even voted for declaring the Ahmadis as non-Muslims. Although the Ahmadi leader was brought in and questioned, and he said, well, unless Muslims accept Mirza Sahib as their prophet, from our point of view, they are not good Muslims or true Muslims, but in their literature, they say they are not Muslims. So that's the problem. If you bring religion into the state, as I said, after the Hindus and Sikhs were gone and you couldn't demonize them for all the ills, who do you turn to? Then you realize there is a Shia and a Sunni, and then within the Sunni you have the Deobandi, the Barelvi and the Ahle Hadith and so on. I'll give you an example, one of the Barelvi, rebel rouser, Khatem Hussain Rizvi, his videos are all there. He died during the COVID. There is a video showing that he is speaking to people in Punjabi and somebody says, Maulvi Sahib, Azan bhi hundi hai. Maulvi Sahib, the Azan is being recited. And he says, oh, rehn deo hai, surah di Azan hai. Oh, forget it, this is the Azan being recited by pigs. And what did he mean by that? It was the Ahle Hadith sect of Sunni Muslims, whom he doesn't accept as Muslims at all. So if you are going to have such a level of abuse of religion and use of religion, all political leaders ultimately play the Islamic card when they are in trouble.
I would like to repeat that. all political people when in trouble, they use the Islamic card. All politicians when they are in trouble are looking for votes, they play the Islamic card.
लेकिन दुनिया में एक ही कार्ड तो नहीं ना है
Thank you, sir. Yeah. So we'll take question from audience.
There is very serious position of Muslims in Europe. Who is responsible, sir?
Well, it's a very tragic situation because the fact is that when the Syrian civil war was going on, Sweden gave 173,000 Syrians political refuge. So of all the European nations, the one which was most generous was Sweden. As compared to Germany, which is 80 million, they gave refuge to 500,000 Syrians. Swedes are only 10 million, huh? Less than Bombay's population. So, if you look at this sort of, the people who have come in over the years, they are carrying with them in their baggage cultural values which don't fit in a liberal, modern, sort of individualistic society. And there have been many complaints how they have been behaving aggressively, attacking women, even attacking boys, all that sort of stuff. And so racism is always there in all societies. Their constituency has found arguments there. And I quote the leader of this party, which has 20.9% of the Swedish voters voting for it. It's the second largest party. That we are not against individual Muslims, but we don't like Islamic culture because it is oppressive of women and it is oppressive of non-Muslims as well. So what can I say? Unless you change your attitudes, there is bound to be a reaction, and the reaction is like burning of the Quran, which is very hurtful, I can understand, to the Muslims. But this is how things are. So unless you change your own ways, multiculturalism doesn't work with you just saying my culture is all right, the rest are all bad. You have to accept the right of every culture to exist with all its complications. And so my God is right, your God is wrong, that sort of story doesn't work. Sweden and these countries became inclusive and progressive and so on only when they divorced religion from politics and made truly secular democratic society. You come back and you bring aggressive forms of your religion, they are bound to generate a reaction. So that's very tragic, but that's the case. अच्छा अगला सवाल जी
Justice Gokhale, formerly Supreme Court, उन्होंने पूछा है, is it correct to say that Pakistan was doing well under Ayub Khan, particularly in agriculture, but it started suffering after Ayub Khan's adventure in 1965?
Sir, you are 110% right. My book, Pakistan, the Garrison State, precisely argues this. And I'm not very popular with the Pakistani left who think that every military ruler has to be condemned as a principle. The facts are that Ayub Khan did many good things. Not only did he carry out the first land reform, well, from an Indian land reform, it's not comparable. I think you have gone down to, in some places, 17 acres, so on. Pakistan's land reform that he announced was 500 acres of irrigated and 1,000 acres of unirrigated land you could own. So that's a very high ceiling. But still, I know many people got the land, and I remember one class fellow of mine in the Punjab University saying, you have no idea how much that land reform helped us, because I could study and come to the university to get an MA degree. So that's the land reform. Even more importantly, he challenged the old order of the Muslim family law. And although, getting more than one wife was not outlawed, but it was made mandatory that if you want to divorce your wife, you want to marry a second, third, or whatever wife, your existing wives or wife should agree to that. And then this would go to the union council, the local government, where 3-4 months the union council will try to convince them to retain the family and break it up. Which actually was very helpful because talaq, you can do privately and throw a woman out and bring a new one and so on. That was no longer possible. The second law he changed was that under Islamic law there is no age limit for marriage. And so he introduced 16 years for girls to marry, which is now I think 18 in Pakistan. And there was a lot of ulama and Maulvis, protesting. The third thing was, in both Sunni law and Shia law, if a grandfather is alive and he has 3-4 children, and the children then have their children, one of his children dies, let's say a boy or whatever, then the sharing of the property of the grandfather would pass on, would be shared among the surviving siblings. And the share which that father would have otherwise received is not passed on to the orphans. Ayub Khan changed that law as well, saying that in Islam, the purpose has always been to find justice. And justice is in being with the weak. So the law was changed. And even with Ziaul Haq and his Islamism and so on, nobody has changed that law. So once a law is there and people have daughters and sisters and so on, nobody wants their women to suffer from this. So this law is part of the Pakistani system. I would say in India you should all go for a uniform civil code. Only that it should be genuinely a code, a citizen civil code, where all citizens are equal, men and women. So it should not be used politically just to corner a community and so on. So for me, I've been teaching human rights all my life. Human beings deserve dignity, rights, freedom as equals. In some cases, one should go and rectify historical disadvantage, which also India did by reserving seats for the historically disadvantaged Dalits and Adivasis, which I think was a very progressive idea. The Americans have learned to do it, but the actual state doing it is actually India. So I totally agree with you. The best part of Pakistan's development in all sectors was during the time of Ayub Khan's, when he was in power, until they started the 65 war. And the 65 war was masterminded by Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, Foreign Minister, Major General Akhtar Hussain, and Foreign Secretary Aziz Hamid. This clique, Ayub Khan only said, defreeze the Kashmir issue. And they then planned Operation Gibraltar and Grand Slam, which didn't succeed. And Pakistan's development since then has never been through its own industrial growth. Every time we have had money, Pakistan has been doing some service to the Americans. Afghan Jihad, a lot of dollars and things came. Then Musharraf joined the war on terror. Once again, a lot of dollars were pumped in. But these are dollars coming and the economy showing growth. Sir, you are an economist, would know better. But that's not generated by Pakistan's own economy. It's the external input. The only time Pakistan was doing this sort of all-round thing, when, by the way, India had a rate of growth of 2.7, Pakistan had 5.3. So there was a time when things were going quite all right. until the 65 war, as you rightly pointed.
Sir, we have heard rumors that during that Agra summit between General Musharraf and Prime Minister Vajpayee, a peace pact was reached. These are only rumors, no details we have heard here in India. Would you like to comment on that?
Yes, in my Garrison State book, I have covered that. Yeah. So, according to what I have read, and Musharraf has his own book in the line of fire and so on. He says that both Vajpayee and I both were ready. We had come with every preparation, to sign it. When somebody from the Indian side told Vajpayee Sahab that according to the Indian Parliament, any move on Kashmir is not possible because there is a resolution of the Indian Parliament saying that the whole of Kashmir is an adu tongue of India. So it could not be signed. So that's what I have read, and I think this is true. So the Indians have also been spoiling chances of reaching.
Good evening, sir. I have a question regarding the events of 9th May and specifically your hometown Lahore, sir. They were unprecedented in the entire Pakistan history, if we say, wherein the fault lines were exposed, where the Corps Commander's house was sacked by the people of Lahore.
Yeah.
So, as you see in the aftermath, the rifts within the army and the rift between the people and the army were exposed for the first time.
Yeah.
So, for the Pakistan watchers on this side of the fence, we often wonder that whether Pakistan is onto a road to implode at any time, and your views on that, sir.
Implode, I don't know if it will happen, but some of these things have never happened in the past. So they can have a cumulative effect in the long run. What I know, however, is that that Corps Commander was dismissed, and those who were involved, they are being charged. It's like what happened in Iran when this girl was killed, and then people demonstrated, and 400 were killed then. Later on, they have hounded up all those people who were taking part in this protest over the killing of this Kurdish girl, in Iran. So, the state is not easily defeated, I can tell you that. The state is able to take care of internal rebellion. What about the Pakistan military cracking up in the middle? Well, retired officers have gone out and supported Imran Khan, and according to reports, he has sympathy even in the higher echelons of the Pakistan army. But the way the British Pakistan army is structured, those who become corps commanders, their loyalty is already sort of established, vetted, the vetting process. So there is until now, there is no indication of a rebellion at the highest level. People have tried at the level of colonel and one Major General Abbasi who was in the medical services. But the main fighting units and all, up until now, there is no indication that they can, really get up and question the establishment.
We will have two last questions. One we will have from the left and one we will have from right. So lady over there.
Maybe a lady, yeah, some lady.
Sir, I got one small question.
Thank you so much, sir. Good evening.
Yeah, please use the mic. Please
Give
use
her
mic.
the mic.
Thank you so much. Good evening, sir. Considering the rogue factors of Pakistani leadership, if the leadership of the state major is not ready to tackle the relations, how this hostility would come to an end in your opinion, especially considering again a very sharp attitude of current government, straightforward attitude of this current government under the circumstances. I would love to listen to your opinion, sir. Thank you so much.
What should I say? You see, I give this example, if the Pakistan army or the establishment really believed that India is our major enemy and we are going to go to war and so on, and that's most important. You all just go to Lahore or watch it on Google and so on. The best localities which have developed in Lahore, it's called Defense Housing Society. The best houses, quality-wise and all, scheme 1, 2, 3, 4, and now they're in 11 and 12. Each scheme is coming closer to the Indian border. Now you tell me, which serious armed forces want their best localities to come closer to the enemy if they really think there is a war going on? I think we have to keep on questioning and showing that all this is fraud. And one day I think we can hope things will change. Because remember, General Bajwa did say that we will not make Kashmir important to start trade with India. And the minister was also identified and he declared the items we will start importing from India. 2 days later, the Imran Khan cabinet itself said we will not do this unless Article 370 is restored in Kashmir and so on. So the problem is, was Bajwa playing a game that I will say this and then you go and do this? I don't know. But if we just see what is happening, then Bajwa did make this announcement. And it's the civilian government which put it down. So how this will change? I think it will change only when a shock treatment finally cannot be absorbed by Pakistan. It's constant need for loans is dragging Pakistan everywhere, and it's a humiliating experience. The Chinese they are going to help Pakistan because they need Pakistan to keep a handle on India, but for how long? Because their own CPEC is dependent on some sort of normality in Pakistan to resume. And if you look at the scheme, there is a road coming from Myanmar through northeastern India and Wagah. So even in the Chinese grand scheme they have, India is not excluded. So I've said to my Indian friends, yeah, you keep telling me that we are a grand civilization, 7,000 years old, and the Chinese are 5,000 years old. Can't these two grand civilizations sit together and sort out that water dispute? Once you do that, Pakistan's current role is also over. All this while it was playing the role for the Americans and for the Saudis. That is gone. So it's only China now. So India can also do something to sort of change the circumstances. But if on both sides, I think one of the gentlemen was going to be, instead of you, Vijay Gokhale, ambassador. I've read his book, I reviewed it. He's into the way the Chinese manipulate the situation and how Nehru was named and so on. Maybe that is true. But there is also literature that initially the Chinese were willing to accommodate Indian concerns and it could have been agreed. But then the Hindu right or the nationalists forced Nehru into a corner and the war started and so on. What is the truth? I don't know. But all this then is something that you can work on. And then Asia will have its century as we think it is. With China and India closing ranks or normalizing, then this century belongs to Asia. Otherwise, Asia is always caught up in this India-Pakistan imbroglio or now China-India imbroglio. So why should we let the Americans come and manipulate this? After all, the Americans need India to keep a handle on China. So this sort of game is going on all the time. So the grand two civilizations must show that they really mean that they have the wisdom to sort out the issues.
Yeah, so Professor Ahmed, I want to ask your opinion as a political scientist on a bad equilibrium that we have, sort of like you ended on the point where when the politician is threatened, religious card is played. And I think, as I have observed, the situation of being threatened in politics is perpetual, sort of. So that means religion is going to be there. And that means I don't know how we improve the situation in that case then. I want your views upon improving this situation, especially how civil societies, organizations, common citizens can improve this situation, can contribute to that, and if any such examples, you mentioned one such example, but if you can just recount some of the examples of that. Thank you.
I forgot one thing to mention, sports. Cricket is a great puller of people together. So that can also be revived, to have the two teams playing with each other. That also gives a chance to people to travel and so on. But coming to your religion being always, in a way you are right, but remember, religion in itself is also part of some material sort of problem. And if, for example, trade can be resumed between India and Pakistan, then those who are promoting extremist religion will have to curb that and bring that to an end for trade to flourish. So if we can convince Pakistan and India to resume trade, using religion the way they have used it in an anti-trade, anti-intellectual manner will become a problem for them. So there are ways of tackling this by creating incentives for people to keep religion out of politics as much as is possible and go forward. I'll give you an example. In 1950, the world, I think, Commonwealth cricket team came to India, and Prime Minister Nehru's team played that. And Nehru-ji then asked Pakistan to send two fast bowlers, Khan Mohammad and Fazl Mahmood and Imtiaz Ahmed. And they all did very well, and Imtiaz scored 300 not out. Remember, this happened only after 3 years of the partition. So given a chance, things are happening. And we should believe in the strength of people to learn as well. Religion has delivered them nothing. It's an empty vessel that they keep on beating and creating this sort of thing. And from what I have been told, many people are moving away from that sort of religion. They can't do it publicly. So if religion is to remain a part of society, it also has to undergo some sort of reform, humanization, and I think only Muslims can do it to their own religion. So it has to be an internal effort. But these things can happen. There are many people who have tried the Islamic reform, and I remember Professor Fazlur Rahman, who was head of the Islamic Research Center established by the Constitution. He came to the conclusion that having bear is all right for Muslims. So, but the problem is he had to run away to Canada to McGill University. But these things keep happening. And now, I think Iqbal's son, he has also argued that drinking wine is not prohibited by Islam. The Quran says that when you are drunk, then don't go close to God. So when you are not drunk, you go, and when you are drunk, you don't go. So things like this are possible. They might be amusing, but people are coming up with these arguments. So I want this momentum to grow. And Pakistani YouTubers are doing a great job.
Last question, sir.
Yeah. Well, this is fabulous comments from you. I have one question. You mentioned in the beginning that it was the imperialists and the ashrafs and the mullahs, ashrafs and mullahs in what is Pakistan today and India today, and the imperialists conspired to create this division, more or less. These are my words, not yours. In both countries, the ashrafs and the mullahs continue to perpetuate the feeling that we are very different and can never reconcile. Whereas the imperialists, who were at that time interested to retain their own foothold in this area, later on found that the creation of Pakistan was a good thing to oppose Soviet Russia as Pakistan played ball with them. Today the situation has changed. The third pillar on which Pakistan was raised, which is the imperialist and later the Pakistan military, have lost power.
Yeah.
And it is these two. In both cases, I feel that very often we do not look at their business models.
Business what?
Their business models.
Business models.
All these people are interested in power and influence,
Yeah.
but that depends on the money they have, the way they raise their money. Unless you are able to change that, you are not going to be able to influence their thinking.
Yes.
I was very happy you mentioned that there is in the Quran the statement that the temporal and the spiritual can be separate. But I am astonished that this is not being emphasized in Pakistan at all, and therefore not being emphasized in India also. So two points. One, why this is not being emphasized, and secondly, do you believe that the ashrafs and the mullahs can be influenced in our lifetime? I doubt very much whether they can be influenced over the next 50 or 100 years. That's my question. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, I think the real situation is very much like the way you described, and one can be sort of pessimistic about things. But what I'm saying is, first of all, this ashraf business is essentially something from North India. In our part of the world, the Urdu-speaking ashraf is all gone. They are nobody. In Karachi, they are cornered. MQM was their only spokesperson, and it has been cut. It's the Punjabi landowners and Sindhi Vaderas and Baloch Sardars who really, and so this is a new type of, but ashraf in the sense that they are the elite. I keep on telling my students that even in democracy, ultimately it's elites which rule. The Congress elite or the BJP elite or the United Front or whichever, professional politicians. The only difference is that whereas elites in India and elsewhere, America, so on, every 4 years, 5 years must go to the people and get a mandate. The uniqueness about the Pakistani elite is it doesn't refer to their power through the people. So the Pakistani ruling elite actually is a plundering elite. It plunders Pakistan's scarce resources and siphons them off to either America or Australia or somewhere else in the West. And they are not responsible to the people because there are no elections, and if elections are held, this elite can dismiss the government, bring another person. So Pakistan's situation is, in that sense, a very discouraging, disappointing, dismal one. But I'm saying that this elite is now facing problems it never faced. It always had America supporting it. It always had the Saudis later on supporting it. Both are now fed up with the Pakistan story. Actually, the Americans are saying, how come we were defeated in Afghanistan? Because all these Taliban got refuge in Pakistan, and I tell you, they'll come after Pakistan. The Americans are very unforgiving. So one thing there, about the Chinese bailing out Pakistan in all circumstances, I don't believe it. They may at some point even think that if a break of Pakistan takes place and Balochistan becomes, let it happen. So I think those who are investing their hope in China are on the wrong path. I keep warning, keep saying these things in my videos, in my discussions and talks. Do people listen to me? That I don't know. People like you, sir, and all are there who share these values and they understand what the problem is. I think Pakistan has no future as a self-reproducing society for very long. It's already run the full course. It has hit the rock bottom. There is no other rock bottom to hit. So unless they change policy, as Hobbes said, that the war of all against all, life is short, brutish and nasty. If one is to avoid that, the only way is to normalize relations with India, stop spending on defense, start trading, let people come and meet, and be good neighbors to begin with, like the European Union, and then we can go forward. So things are possible, and I think the circumstances currently are very different from the way Pakistani elite could maneuver its situation earlier on. People, this housing, building society, and that also has its limits. People must have the money to buy, and shops are empty, there are no buyers, customers and all. It's a very sordid situation. So I am hoping that this would make the elite change its way of thinking. But then we are all thinking in rational terms. We know societies sometimes are not acting rationally, just as human beings don't. But then it's too bad for Pakistan.
Very last question. How strong is Taliban Pakistan? Sorry, Taliban Pakistan, and of course Afghanistan, the other one. How much they are helping each other?
Who?
The TTP. No. Taliban Pakistan TTP, and their part, which is in Afghanistan, Taliban, I think.
Yeah.
So how they are interacting among themselves, and are they very strong now in Pakistan TTP?
No, they haven't actually. The TTP is actually the same organization, both loyal to Mullah Umar who established this, but I think it's the Pakistani Pakhtuns who became the Taliban Tehreek-e-Pakistan, and they did it with a vengeance because when the war on terror was declared and Bush said either you are with us or against us, and Musharraf joined hands with the Americans, they then started going after the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda. So that's when they carried out terrorism in Pakistan from 2002 till 2013, including attack on the Sri Lankan cricket team and so on. So the Taliban are there as a big problem for Pakistan in the northwest frontier province. They even collect what is known as batta, money from people. They have killed Pakistani policemen and servicemen in the army. So it's a huge, it's not just a menace, they are a scourge for Pakistan. But the Afghan Taliban are not going to hand them over to Pakistan. The Afghan Taliban also they are part of the same movement with two different agendas. So Pakistan has to sort out its relations with the Taliban government, and then things can improve. But Pakistan has been meddling in Afghan affairs in so many ways, it's not easy to extricate yourself now. So it's a very complicated story.
Hello. Yeah. So after this session, then you can informally talk with sir. So now I request the director of Pune International Center to present books to sir. Yeah, now we came to end of the session. So on behalf of the Gokhale Institute at Politics and Economics, I extend our heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for making our seminar talk with the Professor Ishtiaq Ahmed resounding success. So first and foremost, we would like to express our deepest appreciation to our esteemed guest, Professor Ishtiaq Ahmed, for gracing us with the profound knowledge and valuable insights on India-Pakistan, peace in our lifetime. Your talk was thought-provoking and offered a fresh perspective on this complex and important issue, sir. Our special thanks to our Vice Chancellor, Dr. Ajit Ranade, for graciously chairing the session today. We also extend our gratitude to Dr. Sankalp Gujjar, who did an exceptional job as the discussant, offering valuable inputs and further enriching discussion. We would like to thank our faculty members, students, and staff of the Gokhale Institute, without you, who has worked tirelessly behind the scenes to organize and coordinate the event. So your dedication and hard work were instrumental in making this event a grand success. Just a one round of applause to our staff. And the last audience, including our esteemed Punekars community, we thank you for your active participation and insightful questions. Your presence added a vibrant and dynamic element to the seminar, and we truly appreciate your interest in this important topic. On this note, I conclude this seminar, and the August gathering has come to an end, and the tea is